The Senate Budget Committee is expected to land on a roughly $3.5 trillion reconciliation package as the starting point for a Democrat-only soft bill. The figure is well below the $6 trillion proposal Senator Bernie Sanders, who leads the committee, put forward.
In a statement, Donald Trump goes after Republican leadership on infrastructure. He says, "So sad to see certain rhino Republican senators go back and forth to the White House and continually get nothing for infrastructure or anything else. When will they learn that they are being played with and used by the radical left, and only bad things can happen? Should have never lost the Senate in the first place. Thanks, Mitch." New leadership is needed, and fast.
I love Trump statements in your voice, Ryan.
So good,
it really
so good.
adds to it.
And what's so amazing about that statement is he made it more than a week ago.
Yeah.
And anytime he weighs in on anything that the media is kind of having fun with, whether it's cancel culture or something else, Twitter is just filled with his images of his statement. Cable news picks it up. He weighed in on infrastructure, and we didn't hear a peep from the media, more or less.
Ryan actually pointed this out about a week ago. I think this comment is like 2 weeks old at this point. And Ryan pointed this out a week ago. And it was really interesting because infrastructure, I think, in general is not sexy and it's boring to the media. But what's not boring is the fact that when Donald Trump weighs in on something like this, saying that Republicans are being used by the radical left and the Republican establishment is falling for this trap, basically, that's extremely powerful in Congress. It's extremely powerful in Congress. Yeah. And that's the angle that for some reason the media just totally checked out of, to your point.
Yeah, and it buttresses an argument that I was making maybe a month or so ago, that people think that if they can come to some bipartisan deal in the Senate and get it through the Senate, that therefore they'll be able to get that bipartisan deal easily through the House.
Right.
Trump has more influence in the House than he does in the Senate. Because people in the House, they're young Republicans. They want a future in the party. The party is Trump's right now. And
shorter cycles. They're up for election.
They're up every 2 years. Yeah. Whereas the Senate is made up of, you have a decent number of people. You have some moderates like Elisa Murkowski, Mitt Romney, but then you also have some retiring senators like Rob Portman, who are at the end of their career. Roy Blunt headed into lobbying, at the professor life. Whatever they're gonna be up to, they don't need to worry so much about the fact that this is Trump's party and that he can make or break their career. So what that means is that if Trump is saying this whole infrastructure thing is a scam, ! McCarthy's not going to go for it.
Oh, yeah.
And McCarthy's not going to bring any Republicans along. Liz Cheney's probably not for it. She's a dino. she's only a Democrat if she can get troops in Afghanistan. That's like the only thing that she wants to ally with Democrats on. She's not really here for spending trillions of dollars on infrastructure. And so then where do you get Republican votes for this bipartisan package? And if you don't have those votes, then you need almost all of the progressives to get behind it, which gives them the leverage that has created the situation that we're in, with this being a robust package. Well,
and to your point, again, we've been talking about this extensively. Like, Donald Trump, from the perspective of a Republican, is absolutely 100% right about the politics of this and the strategy of this, and that Republicans were absolutely sucked into something, I think, cleverly by Democrats, and then they were basically screwed, and they realized that, and they got really upset about it. But Donald Trump's point is basically factually correct. Like, this is what happened. The Republican establishment was once again, I guess, naive going into things.
Well, not once again. They tried to run the exact same play that McConnell ran in 2009, where he dragged all of these conversations well into 2010. Created this entire summer in 2009 that really birthed the Tea Party and the backlash to Democrats. They have been saying out loud that they're just trying to slow things down. They thought Democrats have fallen for this before. Why won't they fall for this again? And I think they've been surprised that Democrats seem to actually have learned. Well, I'm surprised too.
To the extent that people sit back and wonder, like, Donald Trump 2024, this is such a good example of how powerful that message is, because he continues to tap into something that is a very legitimate concern of real Republican voters when they sit back and watch what happens here in Washington, D.C. That's infuriating to them. And the way that this plays out is actually going to be a pretty telling statement on the way Trumpism is sort of playing out. Trumpism has $1 million different meanings, and there's a lot of baggage sort of packed into that term. But at the end of the day, one of the most powerful elements of it is just not being steamrolled by the political establishment and not being part of it.
Right.
And, at least on a messaging side. And so the fact that this was ignored by the media is, I think, just a good example of how they continue to not get it. The statement was a pretty big deal. It's a pretty big signal to Republicans, to the Republican grassroots, to Republican voters, and to people like Kevin McCarthy. And it actually probably warranted a whole lot of coverage, and it essentially got none. And
if the media wanted to use it to dunk on Trump, they could have done that too, because it's interesting that this is happening in the context of infrastructure, which is part of his America First, make America great agenda. And he never managed to get infrastructure done, despite all of his many infrastructure weeks, because he always had some ancillary peak going on. Yeah. I think what was the last thing that blew up his infrastructure talks? It was something like completely and utterly irrelevant. It was like, he wanted Section 320 stuck into the infrastructure.
230.
He wanted to repeal Section 230 to go after big tech in this infrastructure package. And people are like, what are you talking about? And so it so epitomizes Trumpism on so many levels, on its promise and on its inability to deliver on that promise.
But it is and this is the point that you originally raised, it is a good reminder that so much of what happens in the broader political discourse is completely untethered from what's important and the reality. And so I'm glad you brought this to our attention, because it had gone under the radar. I mean, I'd seen the statement, but
it's a shadow ban statement.
Right. The lack of media coverage of it, I hadn't noticed until you brought it up, and I think it is really telling.
Yeah. I think I saw Dave Weigel post it, and I was like, wait a minute. When did Trump say this?
What?
I totally missed that.
Yeah, no, 100%, but it's an important statement, and I think you raised a really good point about it. On that note, we will have more Rising for you after this, but don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any new content, and you never miss the things that the corporate media misses. We'll be here to make sure that we're covering it.